Hello friends, today in this video we are going to study post-Shakespearean drama from the book History of English Literature by Edward Elbert. Now, in the following section, we will be found that although much of the work was composed during Shakespearean lifetime, the most typical of the plays appeared after his death. On the whole, moreover, work marks a decline from the Shakespearean standard, and so we are probably justified in calling this type of drama post Shakespearean. Okay. Now, one of the post Shakespearean dramatists was Ben Jonson, who was born at Westminster Abbey, Westminster, and educated at Westminster School. His father died before Johnson's birth, and the boy adopted the trade of his stepfather, who was a master bricklayer. Bricklaying did not satisfy him for long, and he became a soldier, serving in the Low Countries. From this, he turned to acting and writing plays, engaging himself both as actor and playwright with the Lord Admiral's Company in 1597. At first, he had little success, and the discouragement he encountered then must have done much to soar a temper that was not at any time very genial. In his combative fashion, he took part freely in the squabbles of the time, and in 1598 he killed a fellow actor in a duel. Narrowly escaping the gallows, on the accession of James I in 1603, there arose at the court a new fashion for picturesque peasants known as masque, and Johnson turned his energies to supplying this demand. With great success, after this period of 1603 to 1615, he commanded great good fortune, and during this time his best work was produced. In 1670, he was created poet to the king, and the close of James' reign saw Johnson the undisputed ruler of English literature. His favorite haunt was the Mermaid Tavern, where he resigned as dictator over a younger literary generation. He was buried in Westminster Abbey, and over him was placed the epitaph, O rare Ben Jonson. Now, Johnson's numerous works, comedies, tragedies, masques, and lyrics are of widely varying merit, but all of them, as well as his timber, a kind of commonplace book, which is of considerable interest for its critical comments on literature, shows the unity of air underlying his writing. Johnson was the first great English neoclassic. Like Donne, he was in revolt against the artistic principle of his contemporaries, and he showed in the classics a cure for the uncontrolled romantic exuberance of Elizabethan literature. In all branches of his writing, he is the conscious artist and reformer, working on clearly defined principles. To him, the chief function of literature was to instruct. Now, his plays divide conventionally into two. One is comedy and second is tragedies for Johnson. True to his classical models, did not combine the two. In his comedies, he aimed to return to the controlled, satirical, realistic comedy of the classical dramatist, and the inductions of his play make it clear that he hoped to reform the drama on these lines. His main concern was with the drawing of character, and his creations are important because they introduce the comedy of humor, which portrays the individual as dominated by one marked characteristic. Many of his characters' arc inconsequences types, but the best, like Bobadil in Every Man in His Humor, rise above the type and live as truly great comic characters. Nearly all his comedies, Johnson's opened up a vein that was nearly new and was to be very freely worked by his successors. The Comedy of London, Life and Humours, reflecting the manners of the day. His early comedies, Every Man in His Humor, Every Man Out of His Humor, Cynthia Revels, and The Poetaster, shows his ingenuity of plot, his hearty humor, his wit, and they are full of vivacity and fun. Every Man in His Humor is perhaps his greatest work. The middle group of comedies like Walpon or The Fox, Epicene or The Silent Woman, The Alchemist, and The Bartholomew Fairy represent as a group as his best work. More mature than the early works, they are all satirical in tone, realistic and natural in dialogue, and ingenious in plot. The characters are less angular and more convincing. Epione and Bartholomew Fair are written entirely in prose, while The Alchemist is entirely in blank verse. His later comedies, like The Devil is an Ass and The Staple of News, shows a distinct falling off in dramatic power. The two historical tragedies, Sejanus His Fall and Catiline His Conspiracy, are composed on classical models. They are too labored and mechanical to be reckoned as great tragedies, though their author would fain have had them so. They show immense learning. They have power, variety, and insight, but they lack the last creative tough necessary to stamp them with reality and to give them a living appeal. As for his masks, they are abundant, graceful, and humorously ingenious. Into them, Johnson introduced the device of the anti mask, which parodied the principal theme. The best of them are The Mask of Beauty, The Mask of Queens, and The Oberon, The Fairy Prince. These are. The lyrics, many of which appeared in Underwoods, reflect no deep surge of emotion but are controlled, poised, and urbane. If some of them are stiff and most do not rise above mediocrity, the best of them, such as the well done, drink to me only with thine eyes, have a delicacy of touch and a clarity of style which are as fine as anything achieved by the Elizabethan lyrics. We quote two brief but typical pieces. First is from the Triumphs, the second is from Epitaph on the Countess of Pembroke. Okay, these are some examples of lyrics from these two works of Ben Jonson's. Now, in the estimation of his own age, Johnson stood second to none. To a later generation, he is overshadowed by the towering bulk of Shakespeare. But even the enormous prestige of Shakespeare cannot or ought not to belittle the merits of Johnson. Of Johnson, we can justly say that he had all good literary gifts except one, and that the highest and most baffling of all, true genius. He had learning, perhaps too much of it, industry and consistency well beyond the ordinary, versatility, a crabbed and non unamiable humor, diversified with sweetness, grace, and nimbleness of wit. a style quite adequate to his needs, and an insight into contemporary life and manners greater than that of any writers of his days. But the summit of it all, the magical phrase that catches the breath, the immortal spirit that creates out of words and buckram, is forms more real than living man. These were lacking. And without these, he cannot join the circle of the very great. So, this is Ben Jonson from the book History of English Literature. If you like my video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.